In this edition of Generations, we talk transportation and how to get about the state of Connecticut with Lori McElwee of Eastern Connecticut Transportation Consortium. Also using rideshare services like Uber and Lyft. Are they right for you, and what exactly do they offer? And Judy Jenks from seniorcenterct.org talks about independence and what it actually means to us. Hello, I'm Brian Scott Smith and welcome to Generations, a new podcast for people of your generation. Transportation and getting around can be costly if you don't have a car or access to one. And wherever you live, we all need to get out and about for tasks like grocery shopping to visits to the doctor. It seems the price of gas or tolls on our roads, as well as traffic congestion and the poor condition of our roads and infrastructure, can all make for a headache when we consider how we want to get around. So is doing away with personal transport like your car a viable option? Well, I caught up recently with Lori McElwee of Eastern Connecticut Transportation Consortium to find out more about their wide range of transport services they offer in the state, and began by asking her to explain more about her organization.
We're a nonprofit that's been in existence for 23 years. It was originally developed through need of lack of transportation, lack of a plan B. So we got together with the Council of Governments and with 211, which is an info number, and developed this transportation. And bit by bit, we just listened to needs and paid attention to what was going on and how many people used what programs. And we were able to develop programs for this part of Connecticut that made sense. And to this day, we're still developing programs, and very successfully so.
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about, some of the services, because I know you offer a myriad of services.
Yes. So we help people living with disabilities, low income, seniors, veterans, people coming out of prison. We have medical transportation, employment transportation, low income transportation. So we've around those programs, I'll start with the Eastern Connecticut Travel Voucher Program. And that's a program for people living with disabilities. And we will actually pay for half of your taxi or livery service to any type of appointment you need to go to. Some of our programs are strictly for medical. This keeps people connected to their communities. It can be going to church, going to a haircut, going to a family's house at Christmas time, or going a longer distance than maybe our other programs allow you to go. So this is an excellent Plan B transportation program. Some people have specialists. They need to go to Yale, New Haven, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and it's an affordable way that'll keep you connected to your medical appointments and keep you involved in our community.
I was going to say that's an important thing, is cost at the end of the day, isn't it, for people? Because transportation can be expensive even if you use sort of alternative things. So having something like this, which is specifically created for that, I guess is so important to the people that use it.
Well, thank you for bringing up that point, because transportation is very expensive. Unfortunately, especially if you're in a wheelchair, they can charge more because it's more for them to pay for their insurance, for the vehicles, the lifts and things that they need to transport you. So this program where we can pay for half, at least it does take a crunch. Whereas our Rides for Jobs program, we will pay for everything for the first 3 months of your job. So if you've been out of work for a while and you don't really have an income base to go out and buy a car, we'll help you for 3 months stay connected to your new job until you can work with HR and meet people who maybe you can carpool with, save that paycheck. And learn about the other transportation. We really love it when people go to their transit first and take buses and everything that already exists. It's the least expensive way to go. But you're on a schedule and they can only go so far. So a lot of times that does not meet your needs. So then you come to us. So for the Rides for Jobs program, up until 3 months, if you still haven't established enough money to maybe get a car, we might extend that 3 months.
Which is awesome because it's so important, even in a small state like Connecticut, to be able to get to your job. Because if you can't get there, there isn't the public transport, because maybe you live in a part of the state where there just isn't any sort of public transport or any alternative. You're done for, aren't you? I mean, you
Yes.
can't pay your bills if you can't get to the job. So again, it sounds like an amazing service. And 3 months is such an awesome amount of time as well.
Yes, it's kind of a mixed area. Some parts of this area have great transportation and you can make it on the bus, but if you're working third shift and nobody lives in your area or the buses are closed down, you can rely on our programs to get you to and from. We also work with a lot of other social service and nonprofit organizations, and we teach people about transportation and how to line people up, hopefully on the first or second shift when the buses are still running. Hypothetically, if they want to work at Dunkin' Donuts, work at a Dunkin' Donuts in their town, not 2 towns away, because a lot of times people use all their paycheck for transportation. And then you're working for transportation instead of it working for you.
Well, especially as we see like gas prices going up and down. I mean, they've been relatively stable for a while, but, you never know what's around the corner when it comes to, gas prices. And, of course, cars, drink a lot of it, don't they?
Yes, and that's one of the things when I go out into the community to speak to groups. I talk about what are the benefits of owning a car and what are the detriments of owning a car. We have to pay for insurance, get new tires, pay for gas, the weather. And so sometimes it is great just to use a taxi or to carpool and help somebody else with expenses. So there's a lot of opportunities to think about different ways of transportation, and that's what I do.
So just before we carry on, and I know you've got a few other services, important ones you want to talk to us about, you're a non-profit, aren't you, as well? So
Right.
I think that's an important thing to get across to people because, so many people will listen to this and think, oh, yeah, just another company looking to take money from us and, they're in it to make money. But the reality is you are a non-profit.
And that's what I try to stress to people. It doesn't determine my pay whether you use our services or not. It's we have a nonprofit heart. We come every day and we try to help people like we would help our own families. My father lives in Iowa and he's having some health issues, and so luckily in my business, I've got to know the mobility specialist in Iowa. So we kind of talk about transportation before, he actually needed it. I knew it existed. So when you call me and you need transportation for the next day, that's difficult. You need some time to establish a plan. So I tell people, get a folder, get all the transportation programs that exist, and I'll tell you about our program, but I'll also tell you about 10 other programs that are out there. Keep a folder, and when that time comes, if you've applied for our programs, you're all set to go. It doesn't cost you anything to, get into most of our program. We do have a dial-a-ride medical transportation program, and it was like a membership program where people would sign up for $24, and until the money runs out, we will supply 48 one-way trips to the medical transportation. And that was for any type of medical. It could have been counselors, dentists, picking up your prescriptions, and that really fits a need, but the money only goes so far. So once we run out of that money for that program, we can set them up with other programs that we have. So we try to make sure that the programs connect to each other. But again, it's about finances and what you can afford. So if you don't own a car or you don't have a family member, this is an option to consider.
Tell us about some of the other services as well, because like we said at the top of the top of this interview, you have many, many services.
So another great program that we were able to receive was a grant through Senior Resources, and it was called the NEST program, which it's an acronym that stands for the Northeast Senior Transportation. And we were able to help them with free transportation. So while people around here think we don't have that great of transportation compared to Western Connecticut or Northeast Connecticut, we do pretty well. So up in Northeast Connecticut, they can rely on their transit, but they can only go so far with their schedule and their monies. So then we're able to help them with another Plan B or a Plan C by giving them free transportation vouchers. And so we work with certain taxi and livery service providers that accept our vouchers. So while around here we would pay for half, up in Northeast Connecticut we pay for the entire amount.
That's incredible.
Yes, and so that was for people living in their homes still. So it was important to Senior Resources because they saw the need that people do much better when they're still in their homes. So if we could be a piece of them staying in their homes, then it was worth the money, and we found that it is. We run out of vouchers every year early. The baby boomer population is exploding. So as long as we have the money and money keeps coming in, we can continue to run these valuable programs.
And I see a rather nice booklet you've got there. Tell us about that, because this sounds like an incredible resource which people can get from you.
It is. We received a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, the federal Department of Transportation. So we developed a guide called Getting Around Eastern Connecticut. And if you call me or email me, I can mail this out to you. It talks about all the different transportation that exists in Eastern Connecticut and surrounding areas. So it's another great guide that you can put in your folder. You can refer to it. About 7 years ago, I needed a knee replacement, a complete knee replacement. And when I went into one of my last appointments, the doctor said, "Oh, and you can't drive for about 6 weeks." So at that age, I just didn't even think about a Plan B. So it's important, again, to have everything in place before an emergency or an important situation where maybe your car doesn't start or it's snowing outside, you don't feel comfortable driving at night. There's all different reasons, but this guide gives you some other options to use.
And anything else you want to tell us?
Yeah, something new that we have is bikes to jobs, and we give free bikes. This is a low-income program, so maybe they can't afford the vouchers every day, but if they live within 3 miles of a bus line or their job, we will give them a free bike, a helmet, a vest, a lock, a maintenance kit. So that's just another option of getting them to their jobs.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And also, apart from getting you to your job, you get a little bit of extra fitness.
Exactly. When I first started this job about 4 years ago, I went to a transportation conference in New York City. And there was a speaker there that talked about when people were happiest using transportation. And the number one thing was they remember as children riding their bikes. And it was the most fun way to get to where they needed to go. So it still gives people dignity, which is what all of our programs are about, keeping people connected and getting them where they need to go.
Our thanks to Laurie, and if you want more information about her organisation's services or the booklet we mentioned in the segment, you can contact Laurie by email at ectcmobility@yahoo.com or by phone at 860-848-5911 or visit their website at ectcinc.com. So as this is a transportation special, we thought we'd talk about some other forms of transportation, and you've probably heard about Uber and Lyft. And joining me is Judy Jenks from Senior Centre CT.org. Judy, thanks for joining me for this particular section, because I didn't want to talk about it on my own.
I will help you out, I'm sure.
Now, I use Uber. And, lots of people have heard about Uber and have probably heard about Lyft. What are your thoughts generally about these things? Have you used them at all?
I think it's like anything that you use, you need to be smart when you use it. You know, we've all heard of the tragic stories. And so if you're going to use Uber or Lyft or even a cab or a bus, pay attention to what it is. Make sure it's for you and don't just jump in.
No, absolutely. So we're just going to delve a little bit into, these two particulars, like ride-sharing organisations. There are many others, but these are two of the biggest ones, which, as I say, we hear about more often. So, Uber it started around 2009, so it's actually 10 years old this year. And Lyft started a little bit before that because apparently the founders of Lyft started another organisation called Zimride back in 2007. So effectively, technically, they beat Uber by a couple of years. And then the company which we now know as Lyft was founded in 2012. So I'm sure people will argue, well, it wasn't, Lyft in 2012. But so they've both been around. The point is they've been around for a while and they utilise all this technology. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is I think it is a great way to get around, and you're totally right. It needs to be right for you. You need to check, and we all know there's been stuff in the media about Uber and safety and things like that, and I think it is something that they are trying to change. But we just wanted to generally talk about these services, what they offer. They're very good because they use the smartphone technology, but I think the best thing for me, or some of the best things for me, is I don't have to carry cash or have a credit card because it's all on my smartphone. I mean, you preload everything in there. So I think that's actually a really helpful thing because, let's face it, it doesn't matter how old or young we are. I've never really liked carrying cash around myself. I mean, I carry a credit card around, and of course now with technology, I don't even have to carry a credit card because I can either have it on my, my iPhone watch or my phone can actually do it. And I think that's also a safety thing as well. If you're getting into a vehicle and you've got a lot of cash on you, I think, not actually having to carry cash and being able to just seamlessly, do everything on the phone. So even if you want to give them a tip, you don't give them a cash tip. You just put it into the app. And I think, to me, it just makes more sense. And
also, if you find yourself in a situation where you do need a ride, you don't have to say, I don't have any money, I don't have my credit card. You can get a ride under any circumstance.
Exactly. So that's another important thing. One of the other things which is, and there's so many services, and we'll talk, roughly about, as many as we can in the time we've given for this segment. But also, you can obviously give the gift of Uber or Lyft to people, and that's another great thing. You can buy them gift cards, and then they can obviously download the app. And I think that's another interesting change with how we get around. Is that, again, doing the research and talking to people, a lot of parents, if they've got younger children who aren't. They might be at driving age, and they might, if they're below driving age, is they're giving them the gift of this ride sharing so that they know that they're getting safely to and from maybe, a particular location. And I thought that was a very interesting use, again, of this ride share technology. And also parents looking at it and saying, yeah, I want to use this to get my children safely back and forth to location, maybe even school.
Or home from a sporting event. For the college student, the parents could set up the account, and then they always know that their college student who's out of state or whatever can have a safe ride.
Now, some of the fun stuff about this as well, if you like eating, and we all like eating, Lyft doesn't do this, but Uber does, and they've had a thing called Uber Eats for a little while.
Yes.
So you can actually now order food, again, through the app, and, there's obviously various charges, and it differs depending on what restaurant. But if, again, you have maybe a mobility issue, it's maybe not just a snack thing. I mean, sometimes we all just want a bit of a, it's like a late night snack. But again, I think maybe you've had surgery and you're housebound for a while. Something like Uber Eats and obviously we all hope to have our friends and family who can help us, but they can't always help us every single hour of the day. This, I think, is a great way of, if you had to use it, maybe getting some groceries to you or some food as well.
And also, like you pointed out, if somebody had surgery, if they're sick and they need a ride to the doctors and their family member friend isn't available, they could use Uber for that. So I think if we think about Uber and Lyft and then pay attention to how can this fit into my life? How can it help me? Because it is a tool out there, and we have a tendency to think that if we're not driving, then we can't get anywhere. But if we look around us and we start looking at these things, there's a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about your independence, and we all want to have as much independence as we can for as long as we can. Like you said, yeah, you think, I don't have a car, so I can't do that. But no, thankfully, things like this, do allow that. I think what's interesting as well as against, so like traditional taxi firms, and, and I'm certainly not wishing to disrespect like taxi firms. They have a place along with every other transportation. But the good thing about this is when you call an Uber or Lyft, you know who's coming to get you. The app tells you. They tell you a little bit about the driver. It tells you a rating about the driver, and then that driver as well gets an idea of who you are. So it's a two-way street. But also it's the availability. I mean, I've lived in places before where there hasn't been a taxi service. hopefully with things like Uber and Lyft, I'm sure they're covering more ground. So if you do happen to live in an area where traditionally there hasn't been a lot of maybe public transport or taxis, something like Uber or Lyft hopefully should be able to fill that gap. And then suddenly, you've got, as you say, that ability to get out and about a lot more.
And where I live, there's no taxis, there's no bus. So if I needed transportation, the senior center has transportation, and then it would be Uber and Lyft after family and friends.
And, of course, it's door-to-door, so, of course, they come to your house as well. That's the important thing. I mean, say it's really bad weather. Nobody wants to be standing at a bus stop in atrocious weather waiting for the bus to turn up and whether or not it's going to be on time. We all know that buses can get caught in traffic jams and whatever. So I think that's another really important factor is it's that door-to-door personal service.
And I think Uber and Lyft are very affordable.
Yes.
Sometimes a cab isn't, especially where I live. To get a cab to come to my house and then take me to the doctor's, bring me back home again, probably would not be what I would consider affordable. But from what I understand, Uber and Lyft would be affordable.
Yeah, so what they do is literally every week I sign in and use either the Uber app or I'll get an email saying, this week we're doing a special promotion and it's maybe 10 or 15% off the ride, or there's a certain amount of rides. If you do so many rides that week, it'll give you a special promotional price. So certainly they've really honed in on that. Yeah, let's get people using us. Let's give them that incentive, and certainly things like discounts or like promotions. But I think the important thing is that always slightly concerned me a little bit was that's great. Obviously, we all like a bit of value for money, but I didn't want to see the driver suffer because you think, well, hang on a minute, they don't get a say in this. They're being told by Uber, well, that's the rate. And so when I spoke to an Uber driver, I said, what happens, when the promotion is on? They said, oh, no, that doesn't come out of what we would normally get. That made me happy because, it's great that Uber want to do it, but at the end of the day, my attitude is, well, that's Uber's business. And so it's good that the drivers don't get a reduction in their money, as it were. And then, of course, if you want to tip, then, of course, you can tip on top.
So in a lot of ways, it's a win-win for both the rider and the driver because the driver probably is giving more rides that week that the special is running. So they're making more money, and then the rider is saving money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but the only thing, of course, to bear in mind, like anything, is, more people come on and become Uber drivers. It's a good way of supplementing their income. Mm-hmm. You're your own boss. You turn it on and you turn it off. So you're absolutely right. But then, of course, the more Uber drivers that come on in that area, then, of course, you've got more competition with another Uber driver. So that's the only thing is I suppose you hope as an Uber driver not too many new Uber drivers sign up.
And then if you have an Uber driver that you really like, can you get that Uber driver in the future?
Strictly speaking, no. I'm sure there's ways and means to get round it. I've not found them myself. But again, if you live in a fairly small community and if they just travel that general area, the chances are you're going to come across them. I mean, I've been using Uber now for a good part of maybe almost 2 years. And in that 2 years, I fairly regularly come up against the same sort of drivers that I have had before, which is nice. It doesn't happen all the time, but maybe every couple of months I'll see that driver again, which is nice because it's nice to know that they're still there as well,
right.
and it's still working for them. Well, Judy, it's been great talking about obviously this particular matter with you, but now we're on to Judy's section, so we're going to talk about independence.
Yes. When we think about our independence, we often equate that independence with our day-to-day living. Can we get to the store, to work, to school? Is there a weather problem? Will there be a traffic issue? Am I running late? And with our day-to-day living, sometimes we forget that independence equals freedom, and in this country we have an abundance of freedoms. We can speak out, we vote, we are free to worship as we choose, we can assemble when and where we want, we can move about as we choose. We're very fortunate to live in the United States and have these privileges. But back to our personal independence, I found the definition of independence to be the ability to live your life without being helped or influenced by other people. Now, how silly is that? Of course we're influenced by others. The news is just one example, and we're helped by other people on a regular basis. Who might be helping us? Our doctor, the lawyer, our neighbor, a friend, somebody that holds the door for you as you're going into the store. They're helping you. But there are times when that independence is compromised. Our personal independence can become very limited if, say, the car breaks down. We have a sick child at home. Our eyesight fails. We don't react as quickly as we once did. A car, the insurance, gas, etc. become unaffordable. Our mobility, our ability to get around can really define our lifestyle. Our world can get very small if we no longer have the freedom to get about as we choose. What do we do then? How do we get places? What are the resources available to us? Who can I ask for a ride? Do I have too much self-pride to ask? What about shopping and all those appointments I have? Well, enable yourself to ask and to find out what resources are out there. Call or visit your senior center. Call 211. Use seniorcenterct.org. Ask at your church. If you're a veteran or a member of an organization, see if they give rides. And don't overlook asking your family and friends. They probably would love to spend more time with you. But remember, you need to be flexible and fit what you want and need into someone else's schedule. You don't have to go shopping on Tuesday and running errands on Wednesday. Look at this all as a change in your lifestyle, not that you lost your freedom. Embrace your new methods of mobility as an adventure.
So where do you place yourself in all of that? Because they're very wise words. You should be doing poetry, by the way. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Actually, I had an appointment yesterday that I could not drive myself for, and my daughter took me. She rearranged her schedule and was glad to take me. So we all want to be independent, but then the definition of what is independence. You know, if I needed something, let's say on a regular basis, and you were the one that were going to take me, we'd look forward to it as getting together and having an outing as we went about, and I took care of whatever I needed to take care of. The same thing applies, you know. So just look at it differently and embrace it.
Totally. And you're right as well, because we all get into little ruts in our lives. And again, it doesn't matter what age we are. Yeah. We like to do things on certain days, you know. So you're absolutely right. Flexibility is the key in that as well, because if you are hoping to get some assistance from somebody, as you say, you have to think about them as well. It's not just about your want.
And it's change. A lot of people don't like change. But if you want to be as independent as you can be at any point in your life, you need to be able to change.
Absolutely. Wise words as usual. We'll expect another masterpiece for obviously for the next generation.
You're raising the bar a little high there, Brian.
I am raising the bar because I know you can meet and exceed it. That's why. Judy,
Thank you.
Judy, as always, it's a pleasure seeing you. Thanks for being on this edition, of course, of Generations.
And thank you for doing this for us.
Not at all. We'll catch you next episode. Take care.
Thank you.
That's all from this edition of Generations. Don't forget to visit seniorcenterct.org to find out what's going on in your neck of the woods. And if you want to send us a topic to talk about or want to be our guest on the podcast, drop us a line by visiting the seniorcenterct.org website. Go to the bottom of the homepage and click the How to Advertise with Us link to get in touch. From myself, Brian Scott Smith, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.